All right, so Penny wants rock and roll stories.
This is rock and roll stories with rock and roll grandma. And this is my good friend, Mike Weber. He can give you a little background, and he's going to tell us a rock and roll story.
Yeah, well, Penny, we always felt like I was sort of one of the last people through that door in terms of working at Capers Corner in the late 70s and early 80s, and that whole mom and pop part of the record industry that sadly no longer exists. And,
now tell us what Capers Corner was.
Oh man, you might get an argument or two from other record store veterans in Kansas City, but I dare say it was the coolest record store this town ever had. And
absolutely,
Rolling Stone cited it as a oasis of cool in the
Did
Midwest.
they?
And
I didn't know that.
They did. They mentioned Capers a couple of times. I think a piece on Graham Parker and a piece on Elvis Costello.
Oh, really?
Around the time of the Stiff Record
cool.
stores. Capers used to get a lot of, formal in-store appearances, the autograph signing and all that, but also used to just get a lot of people who were coming through town, and they, either their road manager had been to Capers before, or somebody, on the road, people are always filling one another in on, where to eat, where to buy stuff.
Right, the cool record store in town.
Yeah, and Capers at that time was, not only a record store, but very much of its time had a substantial head shop, and so it was a place where you could come in and get your Ennio Morricone soundtracks, and you could also get, rolling papers with Spiro Agnew's picture embossed on them. So it was made for quite a combination. And,
well, I spent a lot of time there.
Yeah.
I bought a lot of things there, and it was close to my house. And Ben Asner, that owned the place, he was quite a character. Yes.
Well, yes, indeed he was. And it's a funny thing. I mean, certainly wasn't a rock star, so to speak, but in terms of rock and roll stories, boy, we had him there, and Ben, weighed heavily on it. Some of them were music related, and some of them were more Ben related, but people, who loved the Kansas City music scene at that time would remember. I mean, the best Ben story I have actually isn't much of a rock and roll.
Any of this is rock and roll.
Well, in a way, it's consummate rock and roll, but, Ben was, he was an older man, and a dirty old man probably wouldn't be a slanderous statement. And as he got older, he got a little bit less aware. And one of my favorite Ben stories is always just one time he had a Hustler magazine up on the counter, and this would be late '70s Hustler, so for men of a certain age, that probably conveys a certain quotient to it that it was nowhere near as clean as Playboy at that period. He's got this Hustler magazine out on the counter, and he doesn't even recognize that this woman and her daughter are waiting on the other side of the counter to pay for their records. And finally, after what I'd consider an unreasonably long amount of time, waiting, she must have been a very patient individual. She actually reached right into the middle of the centerfold and knocked on the glass. And it was one of the coolest things I ever saw Ben do. I mean, in one continuous motion, he looked up, made eye contact with her, sweeps the magazine off, turns around and goes, "Don't you ever bring filth like this in my store again." Which was just classic Ben. I mean, he never took the fall for anything. Another time there was this really beautiful, light-skinned black woman in there, and she used to mostly come in during the day, so Ben wouldn't have seen her at night, and Ben started speaking Spanish to her, and she finally said, "No, honey, I'm black. I ain't Mexican." And he turned around and punched me. He's like, "Mr. Spanish Major, and you can't even tell them apart. I'm sorry. He told me to speak Spanish to you."
Oh, no, he blamed it on you.
He blamed everything.
And he could speak Spanish.
No, he couldn't. Ben could speak 10 words of half a dozen languages and would claim to be fluent in all of them. It's just like...
And we should say that Ben Asner is the brother
of Ed
Asner, the movie TV star.
Ben was the oldest, of the bunch, and there was Labe, who owned...
Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ben, I mean, in telling these stories, I certainly hope I'm not, depreciating him in any way, because... as far as I've always been concerned, I mean, I had the coolest job that a kid could have.
Well, tell us about that you were the young...
Yeah, and I came in there when I was, well, I started going in there when I was about 10, 11 years old, and, got to know Corky and the rest of those guys when I was just a kid. And, show you how far I'd come. By the time I was 12, Corky was the one that got me my Wings ticket.
Oh, okay.
Which is still probably one of the hardest tickets in Kansas City history to get, because, he played Kemper Arena at the height of his, post-Beatles fame, so But yeah, I knew those guys when I was 12, and it was always, almost just, preordained that, when I got a little older, I would work at Capers, and I did. And yeah, it's a funny thing. I mean, I think back to those years, my memories are really more about Capers Corner than they are about Shawnee Mission East, where I went to high school. Cause, my world revolved around Capers. At high school, I was a relative nobody. But
how long were you there?
Oh gosh, well.
Till it closed?
No, because I went off to KU,
Mm-hmm.
and so I left Capers, I guess, in '82, and I think I came back and worked one more summer after that. But during the school year when I was at KU, I worked at Penny Lane. And actually, over time, I started working at all the Penny Lanes. Then I could come back to Kansas City and, during the summers and work at the one in Watts Mill and the one in Broadway. And also work at Music Exchange.
So you worked at all the record stores?
All the record stores, yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap up this little segment here, and then we'll be back for some more. Thanks, Mike.